Sahanavavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May our study be vigorous and energetic. May our study also be illumined. May we not unnecessarily disagree or cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So this is Spiritual Seekers question answer time. So I hear that there are some good questions. I'm going to mute my microphone and please feel free to ask your questions.
Yes, Swamiji, a moment. Yeah, being brought up as a Catholic in Ireland, was brought up more so to fear God rather than to love God. And one of the big threats in religion as a child or being brought up was the threat of purgatory. And I thought that this was a Christian thing, but in one of the pages I was reading, I didn't mark the page, so I can't find it at the moment. But Ramakrishna is giving a talk. It might have been on the boat where he mentions purgatory again, and it's brought a question into my mind as that you could kind of explain the meaning of purgatory. Yeah, we also had another thing called limbo, which was, I think limbo was a place you went if you died before you were christened or something like that. And I think purgatory was it was a place where you went to be punished. Kind of like hell, but you could get out of purgatory and you couldn't get out of hell. Something along those lines. So if you could bring a bit of clarity maybe to that, that's okay.
We have to understand that Jesus was basically Pharisaic in his understanding, in his teachings. And in Jesus's time, there were three kind of prominent schools of thought. So one was the Pharisaic, one was the Sadducee, the priests in the temple, and the other ones were, well, we can call them Essenes, I suppose, but they were people who lived in Qumran and so on, the Qumran community, we might call them. So in Judaism, they weren't really concerned with any afterlife. Afterlife was a kind of optional thing. In Judaism, it depends how you live your life here and now. And then there comes into the idea of Pharisaic thinking, the idea of the afterlife and surviving in the afterlife, and the idea of a kind of reward and punishment situation, if you will, because you can't expect to do wrong things and get away with it. And so the idea of a heavenly realm and the idea of an afterlife, which was hell, which was there in the Hellenistic world as well. The underworld is what they thought of it as, or I think it's Sheol in Judaism. Anyway, I might be incorrect about that, about the name of it. And so Christianity developed this idea about the afterlife. I think we have to understand historically that it seems that Jesus was anticipating a reuniting. That is, that there were messianic movements which were apocalyptic movements. That is, they were expecting some kind of global resurrection in some way, where the faithful would gather together. Anyway, we have St. Paul developing this idea much more, to the extent that probably St. Paul had maybe some different ideas, to the original followers of Jesus who later became the Ebionites. Why am I saying all of this? Because if there are only two alternatives, that is, that both have eternality connected with it, eternal reward, eternal punishment, what about those people who live a reasonably good life and who are trying their best that they possibly can to do good things, and yet they fall short of the mark? They fall short of the full requirement. And the requirement has been put by Jesus as, be perfect as your Father in heaven. In other words, arrive at that state of perfection. There was this idea developed that there was an opportunity after life to continue purging yourself. That is what purgatory means. It means you continue cleansing yourself. Now, in the Dharmic religions, there is the same kind of process, really, because it's not that Hinduism has just rebirth. Hinduism has karma, which implies reward, which implies sowing and reaping, that is cause and effect. And whatever action and thought you do here, there is an effect that you will reap. And the idea is that in the afterlife, you can occupy a number of worlds, maybe 7 worlds are there, 7 kinds of heaven. And you simply spend all the good assets that you've accumulated. You accumulate some spiritual wealth, some moral values, and you spend it nicely as a reward. Or alternatively, then you get dragged down and in a degradation, and in any event, you come back in rebirth. And depending on how you fared, how you did, you start your journey again, where the causal law operates again. And so it's not a dissimilar idea, this idea of purgatory, this idea that there is an opportunity to cleanse yourself of all your wrongdoings, to continue in the afterlife, a kind of second chance. I think the controversy came about when in the Reformation, there was a money gathering exercise where a person could pay money, and there was a rhyme that went with it. And with that, you could purchase getting off. You could get off. You could get good behavior. You could buy good behavior in purgatory, and get off your sins a little bit more. So that's the idea. In terms of limbo, I'm told reliably by friends in the Catholic Church that limbo is now no longer a part of the Catholic doctrine, because the same question arose: what about an innocent child that is born and dies? Where would they go? Would they go to heaven? Would they go to hell? Would they go to purgatory? They're innocent by their nature. And so there has to be a place for that. But that idea was seen to be an arbitrary solution, and it seems that in modern times, this limbo is no longer existent. Now, in terms then of the idea of fear and the idea of reward, well, we know as humans that there is a short-term motivation for all of us. That if we do something good, then we get a reward. If we do something bad, we get a punishment. We apply this for children, but it is short-term. And society applies the same thing in law. You see, supposing we rely on human nature for its moral values, and we say, oh, then human nature is extrinsically good. We don't need any security in banks. We can save a lot of money. We withdraw all the security. No personnel involved in security in banks anymore. Well, probably knowing human nature as we do, people will open the safes and they will take the money completely. And so the threat of arrest and the threat of jail and the threat of punishment is a good regulator in society. And also, of course, we are motivated by reward. But this is very short term and comes to the egoistic level. Egoistic level means there is this level which is the, it's called asmita, the egoism, which acts as the principal obstacle. Beneath the conscious level, in the unconscious mind, we have an accumulation of experiences called samskaras. Naturally, this has to continue. If all that dies is the body, then everything else will continue. And how we resolve these samskaras in this life is we resolve them to their cause. This is not my idea. This idea is elucidated by Patanjali in his Patanjali Yoga Sutras. The fine samskaras are to be conquered by resolving them into their causal state. And the explanation to that is that the samskaras are subtle impressions. They manifest themselves into gross forms later on. They act like a suction. And how are these fine samskaras to be controlled is a question. By resolving the effect into its cause. And when the chitta, the mind stuff, which is an effect, is resolved into its cause, asmita or egoism, then only the fine impressions die along with it. And meditation can destroy these. Love of God can destroy these. Any approach in yoga can destroy these things. So the whole idea is purification. And the whole idea of purgatory, the word is associated with this purification, purging. So we have to take our own personal responsibility for our own purification and purge the body and mind of impurities. And when we do this, a revelation from within takes place. So religion also uses this fear. Religion also uses this as reward, so otherwise called heaven and hell. But the long-term aspect of this will be something different. And I don't think that Christianity is devoid of the long-term motivational solution. It says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. Other things will be added unto thee. It says the kingdom of heaven is within you, is in your midst. It gives a whole summary of wonderful virtues that is really an expansion of the virtues given in the Old Testament text also. And then we have a history of the beautiful saints and mystics who managed to transcend all the natural forces. And they did it out of love of God. And love transcends. And even in the Psalms we are told, I don't care if I go to heaven or hell, even in the depths of hell I'll find you. So the language of the mystics is very different. And while on the surface we may teach our children the fear or the punishment and reward system, at some stage in a child's life, the whole of parental authority and the whole of religious theology is orientated toward making God a judge, and then a rewarder and a punisher, somebody who is a lawgiver. But then at a certain point, if we are to develop, we take personal responsibility for our own spirituality. And that is a turning point. And at that point, religion starts. So I think we can ignore these things in all religions because we can outgrow these things. The value of dogma and doctrine is to give us a structure, not to confine us and bind us like being in a prison, but to build something. And once it's built, we can do away with the scaffolding. That's the idea. So I hope that's of some value, some use to you. You see, Christianity emphasizes.
Thank you, Swami.
Yes, Christianity emphasizes God is love. Love the Lord thy God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. There's no fear or punishment in that statement. It depends how we take it. Now, there's another question here, and the question is about intuition. Well, what is intuition is a question. So, what is intuition? Well, to ask that question and answer it, we have to make it more valuable and also ask along with it, what's the value of intuition? And there are two types of intuition. Now, when we tune ourselves into the glory of the self, or what devout worshippers call God, we are really tuning into a cosmic mind. And since behind everything there is only one thinker, according to the Upanishads, only one thinker, only one knower, only one witness, all thought carries through infallibly. So that when we, and coming back to Christianity, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In other words, may I align my mind, my mental state, my own will, my personal will, in a selfless way, so that it is in line with the cosmic will, and within the cosmic will is a cosmic balancing power. Yesterday we were talking about dharma, and the dharma as a cosmic balancing, as a harmonizing thing, something which knits everything together in perfect harmony. And so, in order to restore that sense of harmony, then there's a cosmic balancing power, says certain theology. Certain cosmic balancing power comes and restores equilibrium. And why wouldn't it? So there is that kind of intuition, which is in alignment with the cosmic mind. And that really is another way of saying that we have taken all the energy, mental energy that we have, and we have rechanneled it into what Swami Vivekananda calls the superconscious mind. In that superconscious mind, we transcend the conscious mind, and that's one form of intuition. Another form of intuition will be a reading of nature, reading of things. And in that reading of things, then we make our own assessment. And another kind of intuition might be the impulsive intuition. And what we call that kind of intuition is really something that we have learned, a learned behavior, some experience from the past. And that experience from the past has become habitual. It becomes part of a habitual nature. So when I scratch my nose like this, if an insect arrives on it, then it is an instinctive reaction that has been learned, possibly over eons of species. So there's that kind of intuition. Now, what's the value of knowing the intuition? Well, we can cultivate divine intuition by aligning our mind, our individual will, with the divine will, the cosmic will. Then there is another question here. Yesterday night, someone asked for realization, and your answer was that we should ask for devotion and knowledge. But what is this knowledge we should desire? And furthermore, what is devotion in a few words? Okay. Well, many people have devotion. In fact, more or less everybody has devotion. Some people have devotion to their family. Some people have devotion to their loved ones. Some people are devoted to their occupation or their job. Principally, all these kinds of devotions are more or less devotion to oneself. And when that devotion is turned toward the divine source and author of things, toward a personal chosen ideal that is the way and also the goal, when that devotion is there, it means it's an expression of love. And that means every activity, every movement is registered as a movement of love. Now, devotion can also be used in a different way, because even without a God, we can say we are devoted to knowledge, because the path of Jnana Yoga is also a valid path. It's an unusual path. It's there for people of keen intellect and understanding. Leading some kind of a dedicated life is not an easy thing. Most people will practice karma bhakti, really. That is the path of action, and to offer the fruits of your action to God, that will be a wonderful lifestyle. And coming back to the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Patanjali, who is, not keen to expand or expound what is God in that sense, will also insert that we can offer the effects or the fruits of our activity to that great teacher that we call Ishvara, that is the divine one, the one that transcends all the others. Swami Vivekananda gives a wonderful definition for Ishvara. He says, imagine a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is everywhere. Well, this is what we call God or Ishvara, the Lord. In contrast to that, the individual soul is like a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is in one particular point, one particular part. Now, they asked for realization, yes. You see, if you ask for realization, then, and you're in a hurry for it, and you want it in a flash, then you'll have a military coup against it the following day. Realization for whom? Very often a request for realization has inserted into it the obstacle that's preventing us from it, namely egoism. So we should really pray to remove the obstacles. And the primary obstacle will be love of oneself, otherwise called asmita. This egoism is the fundamental cause. There are many forms of this egoism. Probably everyone has a different form of it because it's a psychological formation as well as a historical one. So that when we deal with this subject of egoism, it's much, much better to look to pray to remove something which is more causal. Realization, yes, let it be so in a flash. No, realization is something gradual and meant to be something gradual. Now I draw your attention also. There was a cosmic realization given to Arjuna in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and he didn't want it eventually. At the end of the day, he begged, please take this away. It's too much. I can't absorb it. I can't comprehend it. So we can pray for realization, but are we ready for it? It's much, much better to ask for devotion and to ask for discernment, discrimination. Discrimination is another way of asking for knowledge of the truth. What is knowledge of the truth? Please reveal the truth. And once I have the truth revealed, step by step, this compounded discernment will give me a gradual compounded realization. Also, it'll come by itself. A strong desire is what we should have, is another way of saying we should desire God. We should desire with a yearning heart. The whole language will be yearning. It'll be one of thirst. It'll be one of desperation. This was in the context of what Sri Ramakrishna had said. And Ramakrishna was simply giving us the formula that he practiced effectively, that you have to have a yearning heart. Not only him who said it, it's also common sense. Anything you ever have had in life required an intensive desire that drove you to the point of dedication, determination, and you got what you wanted. And so, strong desire for freedom. A lot of people ask me, see, I find it very difficult. Meditation is difficult. What should I do? Well, okay, firstly, have the discipline to sit at regular periods of time. Assuming that your life is directed in a pure and disciplined way. Assuming that you're living by practicing the presence of God. Assuming that when you sit down for meditation, that will come through. But often the world becomes such a distraction, we need to artificially create a mood for it. And this world, we have to acknowledge, is as a result of our entire superimposition of imagination. We have imagined something either in the future, or we dwell on the imaginary past, which is gone. We have to use this faculty, this image making faculty, to create beautiful scenes and to develop a strong desire. We should pray with all earnestness. Give me a yearning heart. Give me a strong desire. Let that desire outweigh my desire for the world and for anything within it. Let this desire outweigh my desire to sustain my own life and to sustain my own environment, the environment I love so much. And that is why this prayer is there, this earnest prayer is there. Give me love, give me devotion, give me discernment, give me detachment, give me renunciation. All of these things are worth asking for. Realization will come by itself. It's not something that is delivered to your door. That's a great mistake. Realization is exactly that. I'll give you an example. Supposing I have never been to some part of France, supposing I've never been to Lyon, and I have a strong desire to go. Once I've gone there, then I realize everything about Lyon, everything I couldn't get in a travelogue, all the sights and smells and sounds and historical buildings, I can see with freedom. I can see for myself. I can get a feel for the atmosphere. I can talk to the people. I can find out what is the food like. All of that experience can come to me. That's a realization when I'm there. I should surely know in the first place, how please can I get there? Can you please tell me what is the itinerary planning to get me there? And once I've gotten there, can you tell me where will I stay? And what will I see, broadly speaking? That's fine. But realization only happens when I'm there. And so it seems to me meaningless to ask for realization. Ask for the way to get this realization. And that is pure love. That is devotion. That is a strong desire to get what we want. Weep for God for 3 days and you'll get it. You'll get the vision. But who is prepared to do that? Who wants to weep? And Ramakrishna continues, many people weep for all kinds of things. You can gather a yearning that the miser has for his money, that the chaste wife has for the husband. You see, like people have a yearning to sustain their bank account. People have a yearning to keep their life going. People have a yearning for, you see, the yearning that we have, normally speaking, is just an extension of the yearning we had when we were children. We didn't really outgrow the yearning side of it. We outgrew the objective side of it. Instead of yearning for ice cream, we yearned for something else. It just became a more adult version of it. And that's what's holding us back. This is what is binding us. We have to learn the art of noticing the condition of the mind at any point in time and assessing what category we should put our thoughts in. And if they're in the category of egocentricity, self-interest, selfishness, then we should acknowledge them, we should allow them to move on and put something more valuable in, put something more which has a more of a treasured value in, of strength and beauty and goodness and love and harmony and all these values I talk about. Put that in, play a game like that, because the only way really to control the mind is to put things of a better value, a contrary nature. Whenever we see something, if you see, here's a wave of anger coming, all right, let it come, let it go, now put in love and make sure that the units that you put in overwhelm the original unitary passing of this anger. And the cause of the anger, what is it? It's simply this identification, pride in myself, that's all, or my ownership of something. So discernment is the primary founding practice that we should engender. We should, through various means, be persuaded that this world is transient and that there is a permanency behind it. Two things, both things have to be there. That there is an eternality, which we call nitya, the eternal, and on the other side is lila, that it is a play, a manifested version of that. And we have to do this by any means whatsoever. We can employ millions of means because the problem is very subtle. And intellectual understanding that things are changing and not permanent, everybody can understand it. A child can understand it. But then what to do about it? How to really be convinced of that on the fundamental habitual level. Once we understand the nature itself as a play of waves, once we understand that, we immediately get our freedom, our realization comes from that. So I hope I answered that question sufficiently.
Yes, thank you, Swami.
Yes. So there were some other questions.
Yeah, my question was around daily practice. Morning meditation, evening meditation, and how that regularity can help. But on some occasions, I suppose, especially in the evening time, that ability to switch off and just be. Sometimes the head is busy, and I know you've given some guidance on how to settle the mind, because it's busy and it's agitated, or not necessarily agitated, but with all of the activities in the day. Would you mind covering that again? Just that prior to evening meditation, getting your head into that place. And I know we should be carrying it throughout the day, and it should be a natural transition, but sometimes it's good as just as a reminder that you're going to your evening meditation and japa, please.
So I think we have to avoid the temptation of coming back from a work situation and saying thank goodness, and flopping down on a couch, for example, and deviating the mind in what we call relaxation. Of course, it's necessary to have moments like that, no doubt. But to make that the first port of call, as it were, or the first instinct. So getting home, if that's what's necessary, sit down, have a cup of tea, whatever it is. But there is a tradition that we don't engage in prayer and meditation until we have washed ourselves. Now, the Muslims, of course, are very keen on this. They're 5 times a day salat when they worship. And it doesn't begin with prostration and prayer. It begins with washing. And so then we can feel a little physically refreshed. A change of clothes. Whenever we do this worship, what is called sandhya, this worship, which amounts to prayer, japa, meditation, then we should feel physically purified. And that also has the effect of us feeling mentally purified. Even if it is just to brush the teeth and wash the face, something like that, and then change of clothes. And then ritualism. What does ritualism mean? Well, assuming that we have a dedicated place for prayer and worship, something that is a special place which has generated a special atmosphere where no anger or negative thinking goes into that. And then you light a lamp. Don't just light a lamp. Think of what its meaning is. And if still you find it a little difficult, well, make a little ritual. A ritual has the effect of combining the kinesthetic with the psychological and emotional. If we can make those 3 connections And then you see what we do is typically, for example, arti, a kind of evening vespers, or it can be a chanting, or if we like, we can put on music. You know, when we give the meditation workshop, 18 mood creators are there. These mood makers, knowing that we may not always be in the mood. What prevents us being in the mood? Haven't we lived in the presence of the divine for the whole day? Will we not naturally gravitate toward a more intimate connection in the evening? Well, yes, but you see, unless we are, most people who don't do their practice will tell us, I wasn't in the mood. And when all the activities of the day, all the various problems and difficulties and so on and so forth are fresh in your mind and you're still thinking about them possibly, well, then we have to have a way of shifting the mood. Music is a very instantaneous mood shifter. We can use music, we can use chanting, we can use reading, we can use all of it, we can use any manner of things. I was with somebody today, they said, you know, when I listen to all the prayers and so on and so forth, I don't really get any upliftment. And then I said, well, do you know the meaning of the prayers? No, I don't. Ah, well, that's the difficulty, isn't it? If you don't know the meaning of it, then you don't understand what's going on. That becomes boring. And so there's no doubt that won't elevate the spirit at all. And then that person said, I remember sitting in a workshop and gongs were playing, you know, or bowls, you know, singing bowls or Buddhist bowls, you know, Tibetan bowls and so on. And immediately I got upliftment. I said, well, that's fine. Why don't you do it? Why don't you have recordings of it or have a bowl like that? Because you see, it's not the beginning and end. It's not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. Because at the end of the day, the whole of what we call nature is nothing but a series of oscillatory vibrations, a series of ups and downs and frequencies and wavelengths. It is the variation of waves in the various fields in the electromagnetic field, for example. All these waves are there, and the only difference between wave and wave is its wavelength and its frequency, its oscillation, its rate of vibration, if you will. And so the whole universe is like that. So when we get something that catches the ear and it resonates with us, and when we see it as a kind of symbol of the primordial sound Om, then it leads us inward. And japa is also a wonderful means of doing that. What is japa in this context? Well, it is repeating, lovingly repeating, the name of your very chosen, personal, most beloved ideal. And there's a system to it, because this mantra that is contained in your repetition, it is otherwise called japa, when the emotion is joined to it, it becomes not only inspiring, it also becomes illuminating. And it is through japa, really. Japa is probably the most important practice that we can do. And the japa, if we don't do it with the meaning of it and the emotion of it, then it will become dry and boring and induce sleep. It'll just be meaningless repetition. But when meaning is inserted into it, it then becomes a whole avenue, a whole road, an inner road, really, in spiritual life. It becomes a way of opening up the way for us and installing the divine in our very hearts. Of course, the divine is already in the heart, but we have to recognize it. We have to use our glorious faculty of creativity, imagination, and so on. There was the person I was with today told me that they were in a drama group for so many years, That's what they used to do. And but they still had a problem with meditation. And I said, well, if you were in a drama group, it means you have imagination. Why don't you sit down and create a scene where you are the director, you're the producer, you're the actor, and take the mind on a journey, on a dramatic journey with glorious scenes and glorious technicolor, with an internal script that's gliding the mind inwards to a point of meditation. Point of meditation means a point where only one thought is there in the mind, vibrating, and then ultimately even suspension of that, or that merges, as it were, is more accurately put, into just a sense of pure being. And that sense can last for a flash. It's timeless. It can last for a moment, or it can last for a long time. We are not worried about how long. And you only know once that stops, once that finishes, because it's a timeless experience. And getting used to leading the mind in like that and delighting in the process. After all, if it is not a delightful thing to do, in the beginning, of course, it's a little struggle, but if it is not the most delightful thing you can think of. And in a discussion earlier today with the same person, that the problem is that the world is fascinating and interesting, and I'm engaged in it. And yes, nobody says stop that, but do enhance your connection with it, enhance your enthusiasm for it, enhance the joy of life. After all, it's divine Leela, it's a divine play. And if we follow the greatest example that we know in contemporary life, namely Ramakrishna Paramahansa, we'll see he was interested in drama, he was interested in science, he was interested in zoos, he was interested in going to plays, he was interested in the museums, he was interested in art and culture. He himself had an artistic eye. And it's not that will take you away. No, it'll increase your appreciation, because where is it coming from? And when you understand that, when you get to the causal aspect or the manifesting aspect of it, the root that manifests as all of these things, then what will you experience? Much greater joy. A tree is no longer a mere tree. A cloud is no longer a mere cloud. Breath is no longer a mere movement of the lungs. Speech is no longer mere speech. Sound is no longer mere sound. Visual sights and forms are no longer just a series of colors and shapes. There's an added dimension that we appreciate. And as I often say, Swami Vivekananda had an acquaintance, a friend really, Ingersoll. And Ingersoll made compressors. He was an engineer and he was an atheist. And he said, the trouble with you religious, spiritual people, you don't know how to enjoy life. And Vivekananda said, on the contrary, we enjoy it much more than you, because we know how to squeeze every drop of the juice of the orange of life. So it is increasing your enjoyment, not in the objective sense, but because the very fact that you want to enjoy something, the very fact that we even have a sense of humor, means our very nature is joy. And when we access the joy, then that eclipses all of the other small joys. When we think and examine, as we have with these questions, it is only because our origin is pure consciousness itself that comes out as intellectual functioning. And when we wish to cling on to life, to eat and drink, and to do all the other physical activities, it's only because we are existence itself. Naturally, existence will come into the physical being as a will to survive. So it is to increase the enjoyment. Increase the enjoyment. It is not, renunciation does not mean we renounce all the world and all the material thing, we close it off. We do away with it. Well, then you may as well commit suicide, but nobody wants to do it. Everybody who says this world is evil and bad, let's leave it, They are reluctant to do with their life. The afterlife is much better. All right, why don't you hang yourself today? You see, and nobody wants to do it. Nobody will do it. I'm not encouraging anybody to do it. So it is to take life as a divine dance, a divine play, and see the extra value in it. And then we find joy in movement. You know, when dancers dance, they learn a sense of liberated joy in the movement. The art of it is really a manifestation of the internal joy of the movement itself, and moving arms and legs and hands in certain positions in artistic ways. Every dancer will find a joy in it. They won't find it a labor. And we don't say stop dancing. No, but dance in a more creative, artistic, joyful way. Increase your joy, please. That's the idea about it. And so once we understand that this spiritual practice is actually more joyful, and then all the other things, then we won't view these other things as distractions. Because if you sit down and say, okay, let me meditate, and then 1,000 things come in throughout the day, and your mind gets distracted, and you're still working on problems and difficulties and personalities. These are things that can be used because there are no distractions in meditation. Everything is a signpost. Look this way, look this way, look this way. Every person is a walking, breathing, dressed up version of God. And every situation, every obstacle, so-called obstacle, that comes before you is a challenge from the divine lover. Hey, come on, come on. I'm presenting you with a puzzle. There are people who play fortunes to solve puzzles. There are whole books that are designed to increase your concentration. And they're given to many people in advanced age to keep their mind active and keep the brain working. And many people do crossword puzzles in the morning. Let's say they open the newspaper, they're traveling on a train, and they're busy there doing the crossword puzzle. See, they don't take it as an obstacle. They don't take it as a challenge or a lack of good fortune. No, they take it as a beautiful, playful exercise because that's what they see. So if we have a different understanding and attitude in life, there won't be any problems or difficulties, none whatsoever. There will only be things, puzzles that need to be solved. And we can enjoy the process of doing it, looking at it from the same angle, looking from that angle with the utmost confidence that the Lord, who presents himself or itself as this so-called problem, presents itself as this so-called solution, and gives you the capacity of shuffling around many, many different solutions until you come across the right one. And then it becomes self-evident. Yes, that's the right course of action. And so every successful person will need to be able to be sensitive enough to observe all the opportunities in front. Green lights, ducks in a row, if you will. And then even before that, to have the absolute faith that things are well. Julian of Norwich, you see. All will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well. You couldn't get more optimistic than this. The faith that things have worked out well and will continue to work out well, and the sun will continue to shine tomorrow, and the capacity for waves, thought waves, to enter into the entrapment, if you will, the kind of cage of the mind, where it enters in and swirls around in a kind of eddy and leaves as well. And what will you do with it? How will you shape it, and how will you control it? So there should be no disturbances, but there are some ritualistic things that we can do. Make sure that we wash at least the face or something like that, put on fresh clothes, sit down, light a lamp. You do a little ritual, not only in lighting the lamp, but also maybe waving the lamp, do a little chanting perhaps, or listen to some music, or play a gong, or whatever it is, and vary it on a daily basis until it becomes, and don't do it in a meaningless way. There's nothing worse than meaningless ritual, but understand it. And as you're understanding it and doing it, that itself becomes a meditation. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Yes, Swami, did you mean that just by thinking we can get realization? Did I understand well? Did I understand you well? Just by thinking every day in a certain way, we can get realization. Is it right?
Yes, but that what kind of thinking is there? So it has to be thinking which is devoid of egoism, devoid of selfishness. It has to be thinking, raising up the highest values we can possibly do. And in order to do that, we have to be aware of what thoughts are on the stage of the mind in the first place. Acknowledge them, don't repress them. Allow them to come, allow them to go. Come if you want, stay if you can, go if you must, and then insert something of your own and play that game. As you think, so you become. And thought is infallible because the thinker is infallible. Whatever you think comes as a condensed version of a scene in front of you. And how often do we think? We are constantly thinking. So it's a constant game. And if we take delight in this kind of game, yes, it will lead to the purification of the mind. Purification of the mind means I introduce sattva, waves of purity, illumination and bliss and happiness and joy, and that neutralizes all the other waves which are to do with activity, anxiety, as well as lack of activity and depression and all of these things. It acts as a neutralizing wave. So the more we look, the more we see it, the more we have to raise an opposing wave. This is the technique. It's a very clinical technique. Patanjali Yoga Sutras, who's a great scientist, Patanjali was, because he tells it exactly. He says, here's a technique. And the technique, regardless of whether you are practicing a different kind of yoga, such as bhakti yoga or jnana yoga or what have you, the system is exactly the same. By raising an opposite wave and practicing that, practice means raising these waves constantly. So directing your thought in such a way that the mind when we say the mind, I mean the unconscious mind. The subconscious mind then becomes saturated. I've heard people talk about samskaras as if they are bad things. Samskaras simply mean impressions. And if you think in a noble, pure way, a joyful way, then your samskaras will be joyful and pure, and that will be the habitual condition of your mind. And that has a clarifying effect. And it acts, that's the first thing. Second thing is that acts as a suction. Samskaras will act as a suction. The subconscious mind is a suction. It draws things in. It's a magnetic field. It draws things, new situations, new people, new adventures. It draws it in and makes life interesting, makes it life exciting, rewarding, and above all, makes life holy and sacred. So yes, the whole of religion is psychological. The whole of religion is about controlling the mind. You see, even love of God is a system of controlling the mind. saturating the mind with unselfish love, seeking no reward, with absolutely no fear in it. It is all just opening and giving, that's all. It's a dispensing thing, it's not a grasping thing. You see, the lower centers are to do with getting or going and getting and grasping. Yeah. When we let go,
Okay.
see, I often say, you see, if you really want to get the benefit, the rewards in life, then you have to let go. And I often give people something like a pen like this, and I say, okay, let go. You see, now the hand is free, you can accept €1,000,000. If you're holding on to this little thing, you can't accept anything. All your abundance will come when you let the little thing go. And the little thing in this case is our little self, our little ego, which is tiny in the grand scheme of things. You can let it go and let it fill in with something glorious. Make it an open channel for divine grace to flow in whatever way. There's a saying, let go and let God.
Thank you, Swami.
Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Oh,
Thank you, Swamiji.
yes,
Thank
yes.
you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.